Welcome everybody. We got another full house tonight. Not quite as full as last night. Last night we were breaking some records out there. We almost broke the internet last night. So if your internet wasn't working, that was our fault. Apologies out of the gates here, but we got another full room, another standing room only type crowd tonight. So as we usually do, and I would guess we have some repeat fans out there, so to speak. We like to give it a minute or two, get everybody settled, get your drink, get comfortable. Let's get everybody a chance to ease in here, and then we will introduce ourselves and get into what everybody's here to get into. That's the content itself. So again, let's just say one more minute at 8:02 Eastern time. I know we're representing all three continental time zones here, as well as some folks overseas. And I don't know if we got anybody out in Hawaii. If we do, pop it in the chat. We'll be curious to know. But again, just give us one more second and then we will introduce ourselves.
Yeah, just a couple housekeeping things too. Please, we welcome questions. But please put them in the Q&A. And a good thing about the Q&A is that you can check the box if you'd like to be anonymous. So keep that in mind. We're going to ask you a few questions and we'll say, hey, yeah, pop that in the chat. But for your questions, please put them in the Q&A. We do our best to get to them. Last night, we had about 1,100 people. So obviously we couldn't get to all of them, but we'll talk to you about how we can support you throughout the presentation, but we'll do our best to get to your questions.
Yeah, and
we're already getting questions. I love it when we already get questions.
That's a good sign.
Right out of the get-go.
Get it going. And and then we'll end tonight talking about, okay, if we didn't get to your particular question, you have more questions, which I don't think we'll ever be able to answer everybody's questions in an hour here. How do you interact with us, interface with us? How can we support you beyond tonight? So we'll make sure that you're schooled up on exactly how that works as well. The other kind of big housekeeping thing here, I think that a very common question we get, this is being recorded. You are going to get the recording tomorrow. You'll get an email with this recording. You'll get an email with the slides. You'll get an email with the Q&A transcribed there as well, the questions and the answers. So if you have to dip, if you're kind of halfway paying attention, if you have friends, family that you think might benefit, share it with them, and for your peers that couldn't make it live tonight, everybody's going to have that opportunity tomorrow. So without further ado, my name's Matt Carpenter. I'm here in Salem, Massachusetts. I'm just over the Beverly-Salem Bridge. I live in Beverly, Massachusetts, about 2 miles from here, north of Boston. For those of you that is the first time you're meeting me or seeing me, nice to meet you, first of all. And this is my entire career. This is all I've ever done. This is all I've ever known. This is the only thing I really professionally know about, care about, this whole financial aid world, trying to show families how to navigate this really challenging, really overwhelming, really frustrating process the right way. And I think it's a really, really hard thing to do, right? I learned that personally when I went through it 20 some odd years ago. And I've learned it tens of thousands of times since with all the families that I've worked with on the front lines. So I can really empathize with what I think a lot of you are experiencing right now, which is just a lot of overwhelmedness, for lack of a better word, even if that is a word. So our hope tonight, number one, that's normal, right? That's how you should be feeling. I don't know that you can be impervious to the emotions and that come with this, but our goal tonight and throughout the year and years beyond is to get you educated. Number one, help you understand where do you fit in this whole process, you as a student, as a parent, as a family. And what should you do and what should you not do as you're navigating this process? And we want to bring transparency to it. I mean, we talk internally and externally. If you follow us at all, we don't think forgiving student loans is a solution to this problem. We think educating folks at the beginning of this process is how we have a solution to this problem. And that's our mission. ending the student debt crisis, right? That's the mission. And we think that starts right here, right? This is what Peg and I do every day. This is what we talk about offline, online, in front of people, to our spouses, to our friends, in our sleep, staring at the ceiling, and everything in between. So that's kind of our deal. So my partner in crime here, Peg Keough, affectionately known as the fairy godmother of financial aid, as many of you know, and are probably tuning in. Once you see her speak once, you tend to tune in again, as you should. She is, in my mind, one of the top minds that there is in the country, in the world, in terms of how to navigate this process, right? I don't care who you are, as a student, as a parent, what colleges you're looking at, Peg's going to be able to tell you the right way to navigate this thing. And she's done that and built a really successful business. She's done it with her own family. And so, it's still, I'm still incredibly excited to have her on our team, even though it's been a little while now, because for years it was just kind of admiring her from afar and trying to figure out how do I get her on the team. So I hope that was a good enough intro, Peg.
Yep, that was great. And I'll
inside joke, Peg. Inside joke.
I would actually say probably my best credential for you guys is that I'm a parent. I've had twins and I've gone through this. So you're here. So however you're showing up, if you feel like you haven't saved enough, if you feel like you haven't planned enough, whatever it is, just take a deep breath, leave it behind. Really, as Matt said, like, our mission is to eliminate the student loan crisis one family at a time. And the way to do that is really for all of you as parents to be informed consumers. If you understand how this works, then you are armed with really powerful information to go on college tours, ask the right questions. You might not like what you learn about your family and certain aid that you might not be eligible for, but that's okay, right? You've got to know what's going on. You can't drift through this process. These schools are pushing $90,000, some of them all in, and it's just a really expensive process to drift through. And if you understand, and as a family, or as two parents or one parent, or whatever your family dynamic is, you decide what you can afford, and then you set expectations for your kids. It's really powerful. It's prudent financial decision making, and I'm a financial planner by background, and then went deep into this expertise when my two hit high school. So you can get through it. I did. You don't have to have the crazy debt, and you can actually have a great relationship with your kids through the whole process. Because you know what? You're going to be waving goodbye to them. And I get choked up when I say this, but you're looking in the rearview mirror and they're at the dorm and you're waving goodbye, and that's going to be here before you know it. So tonight, I know you're going to learn things that you didn't know, and you're going to walk away more knowledgeable, and we're going to impact you. So that's why I get up every day. So speaking of what keeps you up at night, I know we said put everything in the Q&A, but just pop in the chat. And as we're going on, Matt and I will look at it, but just pop in there one thing that's just, I know there's probably a lot, but whatever's keeping you up at night, because that helps us kind of get a read on where people are, right? And that's helpful to us. So just pop that in the chat if you want, and we will get started.
You know what I have to do? I might have to. Last night the chat was.
Oh, you had to enable it, right?
Yeah. Okay, so now the chat should be enabled. So just thank you for flagging that, Peg, because I think it's helpful to see like what is keeping you up at night. Like for most people, there's like a particular pain point or pain points. That are
roosters.
I know, I did like that.
We got some jokes.
That was an original one. That was an original one. And they tend to be, kind of like they're pretty consistent from each night. Like, where can I find scholarships? What if I didn't save? What if I make too much money but I'm not qualified for financial aid? And these are all the things that we're seeing right now. I'm just reading what I'm seeing right now. And this is everything that we're gonna hit on tonight, but we want to make sure, and we try to make this presentation around what is kind of the biggest pain points for you all. And Peg just mentioned it, but the other thing that, and for those of you that have kind of followed along with us for some time, know that I say this every night. I know my mom's on here. My mom usually doesn't miss a presentation. She'll tell you this. of like, what was your biggest regret around, you know, your kid's senior year in high school? You got so all consumed with how the hell you're going to figure this out that you forgot it was their last year living under your roof. You know, so keep that in mind, keep that front and center to the extent that it's possible. And I know that sometimes it's not. So Peg, if you want to mention anything else that's got flagged here, please do so. But otherwise, it's
No,
kind
I'm
of
just checking it out as it comes in. So I think we're ready to
roll. So, well, here they are, the happy couple, Bonnie and Clyde. And before I toss the mic over to Peg, and Peg, put this in the chat if you haven't already. But and we probably nudged you before, if you haven't created an account, go to mycap.collegeaidpro.com. The first thing this thing is going to do is it's going to tell you, here's your EFC. We're going to explain what that means a little bit. Here's how much colleges that you're thinking about are actually going to cost you. Here's where you're going to get financial aid or not. Here's where you're going to get scholarships, right? So right away, these are some of the questions that we want to answer. But tonight we're want to do a couple of things, but help you understand how this works on a macro level. But if we're really doing our jobs, and if you're engaged here, you're going to leave here knowing, how's this going to work specifically for your family? Where are you on this whole financial aid spectrum? And this is where you want to start and make it.
Just get started, set up a free account. Okay, so let's dive in here. So financial aid, let's talk about how college is priced. So we know this cost of attendance, tuition and fees, room and board, books, travel, personal expenses, right? This has been going up for decades, as we all know. We call this the sticker price, right? Colleges are all discounting their sticker price. So, you know, the sticker price is irrelevant in a lot of cases. And the key thing, like Matt said, and I think I said in our intros, is understanding what I affectionately call the crazy world of financial aid, but then even more importantly, where you fit. And what I mean by that is, where can your child find a good academic and personal fit school? That's very important. But tonight we're focusing on the financial fit. The perfect trifecta is all three of these, right? And so what gets us out of bed is helping families around the financial fit. So colleges are all discounting. It's just a matter of how they discount. And that could be really complicated because they don't all do it the same way. But they use a couple different vehicles. And the first one is called need-based grants. So if you have financial need, and the colleges are going to assess this, and we're going to talk about exactly how they do this, you will be awarded need-based grants. Sometimes they're called scholarships, just to make it confusing, right? This is based on your finances and your child's finances. So that's the first way you may be able to get discounts. The second way is merit-based scholarships. So this is given out by the Office of Financial Aid, has nothing to do with your ability to pay. Bill Gates's kids can get merit scholarships. It's this discounting already happening by the Office of Admissions. You might not even have submitted your FAFSA or CSS profile. They want to entice that student because they want that student on campus. They're starting to lower that sticker price. And it could be, some of these schools, the automatic scholarships I've seen, $30,000, $35,000. That's not the norm, but 5 figures is the norm. And this is typically based on grades and test scores and talents. Every school is a bit different. Some schools, and Matt will touch on this, they don't give merit aid. Not a bad thing, it's just something you need to be aware of. And then the third bucket, it's a discount in a way, but it's not free money. It's not what we call gift aid, it's self-help. So this is going to be in the form of loans, and there's some good subsidized federal direct loans where there's no interest until 6 months after graduation. And then there's work study where the government's paying half the wage, but the student's working for work study, doing a job, and loans are loans. We all know what loans are. So those are the 3 different buckets of how that sticker price, when you get a financial aid award letter, will be reduced. So let's dig into the need-based aid. There's a very simple formula that we have up here, COA, which stands for cost of attendance, minus an expected family contribution, and we're going to talk about that, gives you your financial need. And it's not going to be the same at every school, but this is why you submit financial aid forms. So if you have a senior just started school, class of 2023, These forms are going to go live next month on October 1st. So you want to get your ducks in a row and understand how to submit these forms and how things are happening. So sticker price I already defined, minus this EFC gives you the need. So if a school costs 60,000, you have an EFC of 40, you have need of 20,000. That doesn't mean you're paying 40. That just means that the college thinks you can afford 40 and you have need of 20. They might give you 10. They might meet it all at 100%, no loans. Just depends on the school. And that's what we help parents understand. All right, so what is this EFC, expected family contribution? And just to avoid a little confusion, we're going to talk about this at the end. This is going to change to be the Student Aid Index, SAI. So if you've seen that in the media, the definition of how it gets calculated is going to change a little. Matt's going to touch on this later, but the concept is the same. So just keep that in mind. So this is the minimum annual amount that the colleges think you can afford to pay for 1 year. And I emphasize very intentionally minimum, because it could be more. That's not all you could be expected to pay. And it's annual. Last night we had a question, oh, the EFCs you're showing, is that for 4 years? I wish it was for families, but it's not. It's a 1 year number, and it could change based on your finances every year. So how is this EFC calculated? It's parental income and parental assets, and student income and student assets. Most students don't have a lot of income, don't have a lot of assets, so that's not a huge driver. As far as parental assets, one of the biggest mistakes that parents make, and it's confusing. So we want to really drive home, this is non-retirement assets. So if you've been a great saver and you've got money in 401k, IRA, Roth IRA, that's retirement, 403b, pensions, that's all in that retirement bucket. So if you've saved, financial planner in me is giving you a big pat on the back, right? You don't disclose those assets. It's not included in the formula, but anything else is. So if you have CDs, a stock portfolio, you have vested stock options from your employer, any of that type of stuff. And 529s. This is a common question, and it's a great one. If you have a 529 for your kids and you're the owner and they're the beneficiary, which is the typical way to set that up for a parent, it's an asset of yours, which is actually a good thing because parental assets are assessed a little bit shy of 6% up to that, whereas student assets can be 20 to 25%. So another common mistake, it's logical to think, well, this is for my child, so of course it's their asset. It's not their asset. But I will say, just to answer questions that will come up, if you have what's called an UGMA or an UTMA, and if that doesn't ring a bell, don't stress about it. It just means it's not something you have. But if you're hearing me and you have that is an asset of your child, and there are strategies to move it into a parental asset. We're not going to get in the weeds on that tonight. We'll never finish our presentation, but I'm just planting the seed to let you know about that. So that's how it works with assets. Debt is not asked about on the FAFSA or the CSS, really. They ask about medical expenses, but it's always something you can share, right? This is a time in this process where you don't want to be shy with the colleges. If you have something major to share, the worst thing can happen is that they don't take it into account, but you can share that. If you had a bankruptcy or something that is, you're paying stuff back, just, you can share it with the colleges. And then some schools do look at your primary home equity. So that's the home you live in. So by equity, I mean the market value minus your liabilities. And basically in this process, you always want to be honest, but you don't want to overestimate anything. And an asset balance is an asset balance, right? But your home value, depending on where you look, can be dramatically different. So again, you want to be honest, but you can discount that. There's a concept called the IRS quick sale value, and you're not going to sell your house and get all the proceeds, right? So keep that in mind. Other real estate, if you have vacant land, if you have a condo in Maui and it's not in a business, that's considered part of your net asset investment. So just keep that in mind. The equity in it, if you have liabilities, those always come out.
Yeah, awesome, Peg. I mean, this is arguably one of the most important slides and important, what you just said over the last 5-10 minutes is it's, we throw a lot of information at you over an hour, right? And this is some of those important content, I think, specifically as it comes to need-based financial aid. So let me just reiterate a couple of the highlights. Number one, for just about every college, student assets carry more weight or emphasis in terms of your financial aid, need-based financial aid eligibility than parent assets, right? So even if you have $10,000 in a savings account and you got a parent name on there and a student name, include it as a parent asset, right? It's going to make your EFC a little bit lower, make you eligible for more need-based financial aid. A hugely common mistake is that families will include 529 accounts as a student investment when it is in fact the parent investment, right? And again, knowing what we know now, that's going to hurt our need-based financial aid eligibility. The other two big ones that I would flag is that, again, retirement accounts don't go on the FAFSA. Do not put them on there. When in doubt, leave it out. Okay. And then the last one, again, a lot of these private colleges, they consider your home equity fair game to an extent. So if you're a homeowner, do not overvalue your home. There's a lot of different strategies we can implement here, but one of kind of the catch-alls that works pretty good is take whatever you think your market value is and reduce it by 20%, right? And that's a reasonable way to attack this. So Peg, you just told everybody that. I'm just kind of reiterating because there's so much important information.
That's great. Yeah, and at 529, I was just looking at the Q&A, that a grandparent owns is not included on the FAFSA.
And again, Peg, obviously we talk about this all day, every day. So we're getting a lot of like, you guys are so fast. Are we going to, I think I missed something. Again, everybody's going to get the recording and the slides, and we're trying to thread this needle with providing as much information as possible. But again, without going too fast.
You will all get the recording and the slides, so no worries on that front. So now income is the biggest. Parental income is by far the biggest driver, biggest percentage that goes into the equation. The takeaway here is there's something called prior year. So basically it's a 2-year look back, and that's what you're going to be reporting on. So if you have a senior, just started senior year, when those forms go live soon, all the questions are going to be about 2021. So that's what we call the base year. And basically, there's a few questions: earnings, AGI, how much tax did you pay? There's small allowances, nothing on the FAFSA to write home about, but it is that 2-year look back. And that's why, from a planning standpoint, getting your hands around this early is a wonderful thing, because the tax year that matters starts in your child's sophomore year of high school. So parents aren't really thinking about it then, but to get your head around this, if we have any sophomore parents, I know you guys put it in the chat, it's great. If you've got a senior, it's great. You're learning this and you're figuring it out, but just realize it's that 2-year look back. Now, if your life has changed, and that happened with COVID in spades, people get divorced, people retire, that's when you're going to reach back out to the college, but you have to follow the rules and report on the year that they ask for, and then you can appeal. And that's a webinar that's a whole webinar in and of itself. So that's how that works. And then we're going to pop in the software, but I'll just say the assets on the flip side are literally the value the day you hit submit. So income is a look back, assets are day of, right? So if you're going to redo your kitchen, if you need to buy a new car because you got a clunker on the driveway, go ahead and do that before you submit the forms, right? Because then you have less money in your accounts that you've got to put on the FAFSA and CSS. So now we're going to look at an actual sample family, and we're going to look at these 3 EFCs. So I didn't really get into that there's 3 of them. We're not going to get deep in the weeds, but I want to give you guys a good overview. So the first one you see up there, 23,000, that's your federal EFC. So most schools in this country only require the FAFSA. There's about 200 to 300, mostly private, a few publics, UNC, Michigan, UVA, William and Mary, that also require this second form called the CSS profile, not in lieu of the FAFSA, in addition to the FAFSA. So FAFSA for everybody, and then some schools the CSS. So if it's a FAFSA only school, like UMass Amherst, it's up on
sorry to interrupt you, but we're getting a whole bunch of questions that are saying, what are we looking at? Where is this? When and maybe folks that joined us a little bit late, I just put it in the chat, but this is, so it's mycap.collegeaidpro.com. This is the platform we recommended at the top that you jump on to be able to see specifically what's your EFC, what's your need-based eligibility going to be, what are these schools actually going to cost to you. So that's to answer those
Yeah,
questions.
once you onboard yourself, your dashboard will have these 4 numbers along the top as well. So that first one is, yeah, so the first one is your federal EFC, again, coming from the FAFSA. So the school, that's, again, remember what I said, that's the minimum annual amount that they think you can afford. You're going to probably see your EFC, honestly, and say, there's no way I can afford that. I've had one parent in over a decade look at it and say, yep, that makes sense. It just is what it is. Sometimes there's ways to reduce it, but most of the time there isn't, right? There aren't a million strategies to lower your EFC for every family. So just keep that in mind. Although there can be. So that's your federal EFC. It's used to give out any federal loans, Pell Grants. That's what that's used for. Schools that require the CSS profile, like Amherst, BC, and NYU on the dashboard, they're going to calculate what's called an institutional EFC. And a small subset of them will calculate what's called a consensus EFC. So the biggest difference between the federal and the institutional is that home equity, which is that market value of your home minus any mortgages or HELOCs that you have, that's your equity. Most of the CSS, the institutional schools, will look at that in some capacity, but it's not all the same. And some of them, like a Stanford, they don't look at any home equity. So that's a big planning opportunity for some families, right? They might have no need at a certain school, but then at Stanford, they have need, or at another school that doesn't look at equity. And we have that built into the tool to support you guys so that you can see some accurate net costs. The other big difference between the federal and the institutional EFC is for divorced and separated families. The FAFSA only looks at the custodial parent, and Matt's going to go through those definitions and how they're going to change starting in the 24-25 school year toward the end with the FAFSA Simplification Act. So there's going to be some nuances there if you have a senior, but the institutional typically looks at both parents. There's a few that don't if they're divorced, but the federal only looks at the custodial parent. So again, that's another planning opportunity. One set of assets and income is a lot different than 2, obviously, right? So that's why for a lot of families, especially divorced families, the institutional EFC is higher. And also for people that own homes, that could be higher, but not all the time. And then the consensus EFC is, like I said, it's a subset of the institutional. So they're looking at student assets like they look at parent assets. So at a lower percentage, and they cap home equity. It's not guaranteed. They don't have to, but as a group, they fall into this, what's called 568 President's Club. And so they're supposed to abide by that. They're all need blind schools and they meet 100% of need, that's for sure. So they're pretty selective schools that are in that group. But all of these things, I hope what you're hearing is there might be some planning opportunities for my family, and you're jotting that down, because that's where we want you to get you guys to understand. So Matt, do you want to just talk about the net cost for a minute?
Yeah, totally. And let me just quickly layer on there, maybe zoom out a little bit, right? Because like if you retain a lot of that, you get your PhD in this whole thing, right? Like, but to me, a huge takeaway is the fact that for most families, and Peg said this again, but I think especially for those of you that are hearing this for the first time and it's very counterintuitive, the sticker price, the actual retail cost that's advertised of these colleges for most families is irrelevant, right? It's misleading. And this is a great example for this family of 4, average family of 4 from the Boston area, average income, 2 kids that are 2 years apart, average savings, right? You see these colleges that are these 3 really similar, really prestigious colleges, almost the same in sticker price, but dramatic differences in terms of what these schools are actually going to cost this family based on the school's business model, right? And based on how generous or not they are. And the in-state state school, right, the flagship here in Massachusetts, UMass Amherst, is going to be more expensive for this family than the $84,000 school at Amherst College, right? The private college here. And this is not an anomaly. This is not a super wonky case that we're showing you. This is an average case. This is an average family, and this is how it's going to play out, which again, you can probably see why this process gets so confusing. How is the $84,000 college more affordable than the $35,000 college, right? And that's how it plays out in practice. So I think it's helpful to look actually at a couple of examples. So why don't you put in chat, guys, put in chat a couple of specific colleges that you're interested in. We'll pop them in the platform here and see how generous or not they are. Do they give scholarships? Do they not? Okay, Boston University is the first one I saw. So let's put that in there, and it'll probably be a good one. You know, because Boston University, they give merit-based scholarships, although they're very competitive. They're pretty generous with financial aid as well. So for any college that you put into the platform here, it's going to tell you, okay, here's the sticker price, but what is my family going to pay? But let's drill down a little bit further and see why, right? So for this family, they're going to get $48,000 worth of need-based grants, or thereabouts. The reason being is because their cost of attendance at BU is a lot higher than this family's EFC, right? And if we want to get really smart, you can see why that is, right? So if we click on financial aid, if we want to see the specifics, well, they use the institutional methodology, and we can see what our institutional methodology EFC was. And this school, BU, is really generous with need-based financial aid. So that's why we're going to go there for less than half price, right? And then we can also have some really helpful information in terms of, you know, do we have, where does our student stack up from an admissions standpoint? Right? What's the average GPA? What are the average test scores? You know, what does Forbes think of this particular school? Not that that's the end all be all. And the other thing that we're pretty proud of is that for every college in the country, we have all the scholarships that they offer. And we're really good at projecting how much, if any, is your student going to get, right? And again, the platform is going to take the guesswork out of that. I saw another school on here that I'm going to put in that I think should be a good example. So Santa Clara, out on the West Coast, right? Again, amazing school. They give need-based financial aid. They give merit-based financial aid in this case, and that is the case. They're likely going to give both, right? Like, this is a really smart student, so they're going to be motivated to give them a merit-based scholarship of about $9,000. They're also going to be eligible for need-based financial aid, but it's very rare that families get both. Most schools do not stack financial aid, meaning you don't get need-based financial aid and merit-based financial aid. You get the higher the two numbers. If there's an exception to the rule, in most cases, that's built into the algorithm here. But generally speaking, it's the higher these two numbers that are going to drive down to our net cost. But again, I think it's still helpful to see and powerful to see, you know, are we going to get a scholarship here? Are we going to get financial aid? How much? And ultimately, and most importantly, you know, what are we going to have to pay here?
And I will say, it's funny, I just worked with a mom today who had a lower EFC, and there was a school where she was the child had a great GPA, going to get merit, but also going to get the need-based grant. So it's just every family's different. And like, even with my twins, like my kids were different. So it really differ from school to school.
Yeah. And that's probably the biggest variable in all these things, right? I mean, we almost like, you know, feel bad saying it, because so often the answer to the question is it depends on the school, right? That's like the biggest variable in all of this. These are private businesses, and you got to look at them like that, and they each run their businesses a little bit differently.
I mean, they're nonprofits, but they're businesses. They're big businesses, and they're looking at net revenue, right? And they're looking at their yields, and they're looking at net revenue, and they know they're not going to get sticker price from everybody. They'll take those full pays and they'll discount significantly for students they want, and then they strategize around the net revenue for everybody else. So you want to maximize that.
No doubt about it.
Maximize the amount of endowment money you're getting.
No doubt about it. So with that, it's actually a perfect segue to kind of the focus here. So we've been really drilling down, and I think it's important. I think it's a little bit more complex on need-based financial aid. How does it work? how do colleges deal with that, right? What are the spectrums, right? And we actually just kind of talked about the schools that are generous with need-based financial aid. Not everybody is, right? Or at least the ones that we looked at. But what if we're not going to get financial aid, right? And a ton of the families that we've worked with over the years and continue to work with are families that they're not going to get financial aid, but they're not ready to start spending $85,000 a year for high school. They just can't, or for college, right? It's not, it'd be reckless, right? But how do we get discounts if it's not going to be from need-based financial aid? And the biggest, the biggest option pool here is merit-based aid, scholarships, right? And there's a few different ways that we can do that. Now, I think we're really good at showing how and where and how much you're going to get, and we'll kind of drill down on that in a second. But something that I want to flag, and I'll kind of skip down to this fourth point here is, and Peg said it earlier, not everybody offers scholarships. About 100 of our country's most popular colleges, scholarships don't exist there. There's not one kid on an Ivy League campus that's there on a scholarship, right? Zero. It doesn't matter how talented they are athletically, academically, no one is there on a scholarship. There's not anybody at Middlebury, at Williams, at Amherst that's there on a scholarship, right? If they're getting a discount, they're getting a discount because they're eligible for need-based financial aid. So it's important to know that, okay? Some colleges require these financial aid applications to be completed and submitted in order to have your hat thrown in the ring for merit-based scholarships, even if you're not eligible for financial aid or traditional financial aid, right? So NYU would be Exhibit A, right? And that's the exception rather than the rule, but it's something that we always want to flag, okay? The other thing that I want to make sure that we talk about here is making sure that we're, and this goes back to what Peg said just a couple of minutes ago, right? These are businesses. They're nonprofit, technically nonprofit institutions here, right? Nonprofit entities, but this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. These are multi-billion-dollar corporations, and that's how they approach this, right? And that's fine, but let's just be honest about that. And especially as consumers, we want to go in with that mindset. And just like we would with any other major investment, let's create leverage. Right. Let's make sure that we're creating, we're applying to competing colleges. Right. So just if I was going to get a new car, if I was going to go buy a home, I'm going to try to make sure that I'm having realtors or car dealerships compete with one another so I can get the best deal for ultimately what I want to purchase. Right. We want to have a similar mindset as we're attacking this major investment here. Okay, so what I want to do now, if I can do it, and I believe I can, is I want to go back into the platform here, and I want to focus specifically on, how do we find out where we get merit-based scholarships, right? So we have something called the Advanced School Search here, and we're going to talk about the end. There's parts of this. Everybody has a free version to this platform. Parts of it are ring fenced, right? Where, we ask you to upgrade if you want to put in an unlimited amount of colleges, or if you want to have access to our private scholarship search engine, or if you want to have access to the Advanced School Search. We'll talk at the end about, what the price points are, and we'll make sure that everybody has that joined us tonight has a coupon code that's good only for tonight. So you got to stay on with us here. But this is one of those features, right? And what we're trying to do is help you figure out, what colleges are good fits for my kid that are also going to give us the biggest discounts. And I think this is a great way to do it. So we go into this Advanced School Search, and if you're a family, let's say you have a student that wants to stay relatively close to home, right? And you consider yourself more comfortable at a smaller college, and you're thinking about, if you have a major in mind, you can put that in here. If you don't, it's no big deal. And there's some other filters, right? But if we choose a few, now we can go ahead and rank order schools based on the financial piece. So if we know we're not eligible for financial aid, I can just go search based on who's going to give me the most in scholarship dollars, right? Which is a pretty stinking cool feature here. So I could say, okay, well, these are some interesting ideas, and, hey, geez, I love Burlington, Vermont, St. Michael's College. It wasn't really on our radar, but they're going to give us a $30,000 discount. Maybe we add it to the list, right? And Wheaton College, we kind of dismissed it, but if they're going to give us $40,000 off regardless of our income, let's add it to the list, right? It's a pretty powerful feature, I think. And if we are eligible for financial aid, we can sort just based on that, right? So go show me schools that are giving me the most in need-based financial aid, rank order those. MIT, man alive, it's tough to get into MIT, but here's some other ideas of colleges that are really generous with financial aid that might be more accessible from an admissions standpoint. So again, that's something that we want to help provide to help everybody be, smart consumers, right? And figure out what's going to be the right fit for our kid. That's also going to be at the right price point here.
You want me to touch on the affordability?
Yes, I do. Let me get
while you're in there.
Yes. Thank you.
So this part is really near and dear to my heart. So this is very intentional how we set this up to support you guys, where it's like, hey, here's your EFCs, which is just the tip of the iceberg to start understanding where you fit. Here's some projected net costs. Now you can go shop with financial fit in mind, like Matt just showed you. But then it's about what is affordable for you. You really have to keep that in mind. As I always tell parents, colleges do not care if and when you retire. Not slamming the colleges, it's not their job, right? That's on all of us as individuals to keep that in mind. So you really want to think about, what can I afford? And when you onboard, all you guys that are in there, you were asked that question, how much can you afford for a year? And sometimes people meet with me and they're like, Peg, I just really didn't know what to put. And I say, that's awesome, because now you're starting to think about it and you're going to talk about it if there's two parents in a family, and really grapple with it, figure it out, and then you can talk to your kids about it. So when we talk about affordability, what we're doing is saying, what's that 4-year cost to you? So on the dashboard, you saw the 1-year net cost. We multiply that by 4 because we want this to be 4 years, right? Not more than 4 years. My daughter's school, they call them super seniors. Times 4 with an inflation factor in there. But then we bring in, are you on the affordability? Oh, there you are. Okay. Then, like, if you go to Amherst, you've got $81,535 is the net cost for the sample family. But you see below it, it says your pre-approval. We call that college pre-approval. So similar to when you're going to go buy a house, the realtor says, go to the bank and get approved, right? You're not going to look at $1 million houses when you can afford $500,000. Same thing for college. I know it's your kids, and I know you might have ideas of schools that you want to look at, but figure out what you can afford before you go shopping, because you might be shopping for Maseratis, literally, right? That you can't afford. So with this family, they've plugged in, hey, we can afford about $86,000 over 4 years. Well, at Amherst, it's looking sweet, right? There's no loans at Amherst. But as you go and you look at these other schools, it's pretty different, right? At BC, you've got 92.5. At NYU, you're up to 157.5. So we show you that. And then we also show you what, if you want to click on,
yeah, I do.
Going in that way. Yeah, you just want to click on, you just want to.
Just really quickly, Peg, but the weird thing here is for some families, the Maserati will be the most affordable car for their family.
And it could be a Maserati that's an out-of-state public school. It doesn't mean that the Maserati is a $90,000, $85,000 school. Again, it really depends on your family and your student. And somebody put in the Q&A, well, I've heard about free rides at, full rides at Harvard. Yeah, Harvard is amazing at offering need-based aid. So a family that has a $4,000, $10,000 EFC, a certain income level, they just say, here, tuition's free, right? But as Matt said, if you have a kid who aced the SATs and has a 4.0 unweighted average, you're not going to get a dime from the Ivies, from the MITs of the world. So you have to understand how the financial aid policy at that school. So that's addressing that question that I saw in the Q&A. So then we go a little deeper here and just show you order of magnitude. Hey, if you're really going to consider this, 157,000 of loans, that most of those are going to be co-signed. So they're on the co-signers back as much as the students. You're looking at 1,750 over 10 years, over 1,000 over 25. And then we look at, hey, if you do graduate in business from NYU, that's an estimate of your take-home pay. So we're trying to really put it in front of families like, this is what you're thinking of signing up for. If you decide to do this with your eyes wide open, God bless you. I wouldn't do that, but you know, and you're an informed consumer. So I go to bed saying, well, I did my job with that family. So we're really doing our best to put this in front of you. And this should not be something you're looking at the end of senior year, because you're reacting to the colleges at that point. You're stuck, right? I've had parents year after year. I got 20,000 in discounts, but I can't afford the 40. Well, that mom could have known that. She could have seen estimates of that as you were list building, so that you might have some of those schools on your list, and you might set expectations for your kids. Hey, you're going to have to find private outside scholarships. You're going to have to really work in the summers, and you can have that conversation. And then you're modeling responsible financial decision making with your kids, which you can see how fired up I'm getting. It's massive. It's a massive thing to show by example, and it'll cut down on stress and friction. I'm just going to say, I did this with my son, 2 schools. One was affordable. One was $70,000 more. And I looked at him and said, Brennan, we talked about this. And he said, all right, I'm going to go to the other school. There was no friction, went there and excelled. So I'm just saying, parent to parent, you can do this. You just have to embrace this and understand where you fit, so that you can set expectations before you get those admission decisions and the financial aid award letters.
No doubt about it. And this is huge, right? And what we found is that we've never met teenagers that can grasp the difference between borrowing 160,000 and 90,000 and 45,000. But what they can get their heads around a little bit, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, is here's my first monthly payment. Does that seem palpable compared to what my expected take-home pay is based on the major, based on the school, which obviously we know that's a huge moving target, but to have at least some guidelines in terms of rough numbers, I think is really, really powerful. And we've seen that play out, right? Where even for these adolescent brains, they can wrap their heads around these by the month numbers. So
it's powerful. And just one thing, somebody wrote it, cost of attendance is the full sticker price. Net cost is what we're estimating after a discount. So they are not the same. And hopefully they're dramatically different, because you're getting a discount. So I just wanted to answer that live, because that's important.
Well, and we're getting great questions here, great interaction, and I appreciate the engagement, right? You guys have been completely dialed in. So I'm going to try to get I'm going to go through some things quickly again. Right now, the reason why I feel extra confident, why we can go quick through these next couple of tidbits, is we're going to be back in a couple of weeks talking about, literally going line by line through the financial aid applications, line by line through the FAFSA, line by line through the CSS profile, all the do's, all the don'ts. So we're not going anywhere. You're going to have access to us kind of at a time that it works for you, but we want to plant some seeds. And Peg, actually, there's probably a good opportunity to mention, because we've been getting questions, put your office hours link in the chat, if you will. So every other Monday, me and Peg, other members of our team, do just what we call office hours, right? Come on in and ask your questions. And we go live 7 Eastern time every other Monday. We'll talk about what's topical. We'll help guide conversations, but we're there just to answer your questions, right? And again, completely free. We don't charge anything for that. So if you pop that in the...
Yeah, I did. It's a recurring webinar. You register once, we'll send you reminders. A lot of parents hang out the whole hour because they learn from other parents' questions. So it's a great opportunity, great support to get that burning question asked that's keeping you up at night.
100%. And guess what? They're going to change. Some of them you don't, a lot of times you don't know what questions to ask right now, right? And that's going to change as the weeks go by, especially for you class of 2023 family. So how do you apply for financial aid? The short answer is it depends on the college, right? And the onus is completely on you here. These colleges are not very proactive. So it's up to you to seek out them as this list comes to fruition here, right? So if you're applying to 10 schools, you have to go to these 10 colleges, financial aid websites to see what do they require, when do they require it, how do they require it. Everybody requires the FAFSA. There's no exceptions there, full stop. But a lot of these private colleges, in addition to the FAFSA, require the CSS profile, or in lieu of, or in addition to the CSS profile, have their own institutional form. But the takeaway is You have to know, what do they require? When do they require it? How do they require it? Right. And don't miss a deadline. Do not give these guys excuses to give you less money, because in most cases, they're going to take you up on that. Okay. Now, again, everybody's going to get the slides here. So, you're going to have these live links and kind of we're going to hold your hand around, here's where to get the FAFSA. Here's how to access it. And again, we're going to take you through it line by line once it goes live. It does not go live until October 1st, right? And it's October 1st of your student senior year. So for class 2023 families, I don't care how proactive you are, you can't have access to the FAFSA until October 1st. Class 2024 families, it's a year from October 1st. So sit tight on it. We're just kind of educating you a little bit leading up to this. Same thing with the CSS profile. So the CSS profile is this financial aid application that a lot of these colleges require in addition to the FAFSA. Now, one of my best buds, co-founder of our company, we call him Uncle Bill, Bill Rabbit on our team here. His kind of prescription is, you can get through the FAFSA with a glass of wine or two, you're going to be fine. CSS profile is going to require at least the whole bottle. Okay. And that's kind of the mindset you want to have, right? I mean, this is the beast here, right? The FAFSA gets a lot of press. The CSS profile, this is the one that's several hundred questions, very invasive, very nuanced questions. This is the one that you really got to kind of just get through. Okay. But do get through it, because if you don't, you are telling these colleges that you'll pay full sticker price. Okay. Something I do want to highlight specifically, because we got a bunch of questions on it tonight, as we always do. How does this whole thing work for two household families, right? What if we're divorced? What if we're separated? How does this play out, right? And I'm going to go back to kind of the default answer, which is it depends on the college. And you have to be comfortable with the colleges that you're applying to. How do they handle this? But we can put them into a couple different broad buckets here. Now, colleges that only require the FAFSA, the only information that goes on the FAFSA is that of the custodial parent or parents, whoever the student lives with the most over the course of the year, right? And even if it's 50-50, it's whoever the student lives with the most over the course of a year, that's who completes the FAFSA. If that parent is remarried, that's a custodial parent, according to the Department of Education. So it's the combined information that goes on to the FAFSA. It's as if the biological parent, the non-custodial biological parent doesn't exist, right? That's how it's done at schools that only require the FAFSA, and that's how it's done on the FAFSA period. Colleges that require the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA, many of them, most of them, want both households to complete this CSS profile. They're going to complete their own. It's not like they complete a joint application. You're not going to see one another's financial information, but you're going to have to provide it to the colleges separately, right? And they're both going to be considered. So obviously colleges that require the income and assets from both households, can potentially be more expensive from a need-based financial aid standpoint. Okay, but again, the short answer to that question, we do presentations entirely on how this works for divorced and separated families. But the short answer is it depends on the college. If they only require the FAFSA, only the custodial parent or parents information goes on there. If they require the CSS profile, we have to find out that they need it from just the custodial household, or is it both households? In most cases, it's both households. Okay. There's some major changes coming to the FAFSA. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I'm going to focus on what I want for a call to action from you all. There's some good changes coming. The biggest two, there's going to be less questions, significantly less questions. We love that. There's going to be more resources. There's going to be more help. There's going to be more money for the families that need it the most. Everybody loves that, right? There's a couple problems I have with some of these changes. The biggest one is that if you're a family with more than one student in college at once, right now, the formula accounts for that. They say, hey, you got twins. You got the same, you have a certain income, a certain amount of savings, but you have twins, or you have kids 2 years apart, but they're going to overlap for 2 years. Our formula accounts for that. These new changes that got passed by Congress and the Department of Education are getting rid of that. Okay, so for kids or for families that have multiple kids in college at once, the cost of college for most of these families is going to double. So it's blasphemy. Okay, so I started a petition We got 65,000 signatures thereabouts. Right now, I'm sure Peg, I'm sure you just popped that in the chat.
Yeah, I just popped it in the petition.
Sign it, share it, get on your soapbox, because what we're finding out, and I've been on the front lines here, is that until we get 100,000 signatures, we're not going to move the needle. We're not going to get in front of decision makers, but we have made some progress, man. You know, we're about $65,000 signatures or 65,000 signatures, and we've done it just like this, right? Just kind of grassroots type of deal. So please help us continue these efforts. Again, I'm not going to spend time here because we have an entire presentation, literally, that we do a couple times over the course of this year, not tonight, that talks about, okay, once we get an offer from colleges, how do we go back and get more money? And we don't use the word negotiate, especially Peg. She gets very nervous around
Not negotiating, it is not.
We appeal for additional financial aid consideration, but there is a method to that madness. We're pretty good at it, and I think we're pretty good at coaching it. So, so stay tuned, but we're not going to focus on that right now. So I've purposely neglected these questions because they've come in kind of fast and furious here throughout tonight, which is kind of like, okay, if we want to, you know, talk with you guys, interface with you guys beyond tonight, what does that look like? What are our options? And sorry, I'm having a tough time. Thank you for bearing with me here. You know, what are our options? And from where I sit, there's two kind of broad buckets that I would recommend. If you're a DIYer, if you're pretty hands-on here, right, and you like to do things on your own, you have the free version of the platform and the story, keep using that. If you want all the bells and whistles of the platform, so that means you put on unlimited schools in there, you have the advanced search, you have the private scholarship search engine, some of the other features, it's $149 for the year. If you decide to do that tonight, we are, you know, we're creating some urgency here. We have a coupon code, and it's and Peg,
I'll put it in the chat too.
It's 2023-15, you get 15% off. So basically it's like, I think it's $124 for the year or something like that, if you want all the bells and whistles of the platform. Something that we feel pretty confident in recommending is, if you want all the bells and whistles of the platform, but you also want to spend an hour with the human being, an expert, in addition to that, we have this valedictorian option, right? And we have pretty stinking good experts. So actually, I told this to Peg earlier, I'm like, should I show us a screenshot of earlier today? And that's early. This is just one screen. We had two screens here, but here's some of the experts on the team. This is the director of financial aid at MIT Sloan School of Management. This is the director of financial aid at Denison University. On the other screen, we have the director of financial aid at Harvard Medical. And then these are some of the most seasoned professionals in this industry that this guy right here, Carl Buck, former director of financial aid at UCLA, Rice, and Rutgers. And then a lot of these other folks are just some of the most seasoned veterans that I've ever come across in my entire career. And we've spent a lot of time seeking them out to try to get them to be a part of the team, and they are. So that's who you're meeting with. And of course you have Peg and I as well, if you choose to, right? And I think that's a wise investment. Now, if you're looking at this, if you're a family that says, I love this platform and I want all the features, but I can't afford $149 a year, email us. Right? Just ping us and say, I want this, but I can't afford it. We don't vet it. We don't second guess you. We'll get you on the platform. We underwrite that ourselves for this scholar platform.
And I just put our email in the chat. We really don't want to leave anybody behind, right? So if that's, and it's on the honor system, right? If that's a hard nut to crack, we get it. You know, everybody's different. Just email us and we're happy to upgrade you so you can get in there, put in the unlimited schools, and really start planning.
And the last way to kind of interface with us, I shouldn't say the last way, but another option to interface with us is, we just know there's a percentage of folks that say, I don't have the time for this. I don't have the expertise. There's too much at stake. I don't want to mess anything up. Just Jesus, take the wheel, right? That's why we say, you know, wake me when it's over. And that's kind of the deal there. There's unlimited hours. You're working with someone one-on-one from beginning to the end in this process. We help you put your list of schools together. We make sure you're qualifying for the max amount of financial aid. You know, we actually, and this is a big one for a lot of people, we manually complete the financial aid applications. We do the FAFSA, we do the CSS profile, we do the institutional application. So we make sure we're not making mistakes. We're not missing deadlines. You know, we're doing it the right way, on time, et cetera. We get hands-on with the appeals, right? And that's why it's awesome to be able to leverage our team to say, hey, Ryan, you used to be the director of financial aid at Boston College. We're trying to appeal for more money there. You know, what's the best way to approach it here? Okay. And then finally, when we have to pay the bill, how do we do that? If we have resources, when do we use what? Can we get smart from a tax standpoint? If we have to borrow, what loan should we take? Right. So it's kind of like, how do we bring this nut down as low as it can go? And then how do we get really smart about paying for it? And these are for some families, and we just kind of say like, and I kind of mentioned a couple, and here's some kind of other families that should probably consider making the investment if they fit into any of these categories, right? If you are a 2-household family, if you do own your home, if you are a business owner, you know, we're probably worth considering. Now, obviously the price point is completely different. It's a lot more money, right? So it's not, for some people that's a non-starter, but we like to just be transparent and say, this is how, you know, this option works, right? It's $29.99 for the year, but we have this, this discount tonight. And with that, it's, you know, I think you get like $500 off. Let me show you. But yeah, for this particular option, you know, it's, yeah, it's about $450 off, right? So if you wanted to do that, you know, kind of wake me up when it's over option, and you don't have to pay for that tonight, but if you think that's an option you want, I'm sure Peg put the link
about to put it
there.
in.
Yeah, just Peg's gonna put the link in the chat there. You just sign up for it, say, yeah, I think I want this. You don't put in credit card information or anything like that, but then you can kind of meet, you know, the expert that you'd be working with, ask any questions that you have, kind of give a sniff test, and if you think it's worth it from there, you move forward. And if you don't, no harm, no foul, but that kind of locks you into the $500 off. So the other thing that I will say with that is that we're just about getting ready to close out our 2023 class, right? We have to limit that just because it takes a lot of manpower to kind of service those. We can only have so many families that we work with per expert there. So there's a little bit of urgency there. When it comes to the scholar, when it comes to the valedictorian, we're not going anywhere. There's no urgency outside of this little discount we got going. I don't want to call it little, outside of this meaningful discount we got going tonight. So hopefully that gives you an idea again of how you can interface with us beyond tonight. If nothing else, we do these presentations throughout the entire year. We do them almost on a weekly basis, right? I mean, Peg, and in most cases, more than once a week.
Yeah, and sometimes multiple. Some questions are coming in. If you already have Scholar and you want to meet with somebody, up in the top right corner of your dashboard, it'll say book expert consultation. You just click there, use the coupon code, and you can book a meeting. It's $299. With the coupon code, as Matt has up on the slide, it's $254. If you are not Scholar and you're wondering about what to do, you're in the free version. If you book valedictorian, the meeting, because you know you're going to want a meeting at some point, you'll automatically get the Scholar upgrade for free. So in my mind, if you think you're going to need to meet with somebody to review your financial aid forms, make sure you got it dialed in, to talk about appealing, to just talk about your family, your divorce, your business owner, and you want to get that dialed in, just do valedictorian, lock in your discount. You don't have to sign up for your meeting right away. You get your upgrade. It's kind of a no-brainer, right? If you know you're going to do that. Most families end up needing the support. I mean, what we've really done here is we've created a community where we have software to guide you, but then we have office hours and webinars and a lot of free support to hit you at the different parts of this journey. We know where you're going and we know the pain points, to be totally candid, right? And so we're gonna help you at those points to alleviate the stress, help you get through the forms, do the line by lines like Matt said. But if you're somebody, and most people, if it's you, you know it's you, and you're just like, I get it, this is important, but I don't want to own it. That's the wake me when it's over. But the others, if you're okay to own some of this, then book meetings when you need them, right? And take advantage of office hours. Support at collegeaid.pro. We're not gone once you subscribe to the software. We have a support team that does nothing all day but get your emails and address them, right? If you have in-depth questions about your family situation, we're going to tell you, you got to book an hour, right? But if you have a question that's easy to answer, that's not specific and requiring strategy, we're happy to help. So
I think you nailed it, Peggy, as always. But yeah, I mean, to me, the big takeaway is like, yeah, hey, listen, we try to, if you see an opportunity for a return on investment here, which we do, we try to reward those folks that show up live with us and give them a discount, right? We do it for all our live webinars. For all our live webinars, we'll give some type of discount so long as folks book that night to try to reward our the fans, right? The diehards, but if nothing else, just follow along with us, right? We're not going anywhere. This is all we do. And if I have my way, is all I'll ever do. So, Peggy, you nailed it, buddy. But
my parting thought is just whatever you do something, right? Take that next step, learn and be an informed consumer, because you will be so happy that you did. I trust that all of you know things now that you didn't know an hour ago, and that should help you on this journey and hopefully significantly impact you and your child's next chapter. So
you said it, buddy. You said it. All right. Good night, everybody. We hope to see you soon. And for those of you that were joining in for the first time, we're glad to have you be part of this journey with us.
Yeah. Have a great night.
Good night, everybody.